Hi, everybody. As mentioned, I'm JD from Exonify, and thank you so much for joining us for a critical part of the hospitality conversation. I think is often an unfortunately overlooked part of the hospitality conversation, and that's people, specifically your people. Now, I know a lot of you in the room are not, quote unquote, the people within your business, but I think it's important to talk about how we can take a people focus in everything we do strategically within a hospitality organization. Because when we talk about things like advancing marketing strategies and personalizing the guest experience and getting smarter with AI and data, ultimately, none of it matters if the people who see and serve our guests every day don't have the support they need to do their best work and bring your brand experience to life. And that's something that was embedded in me, this idea of a people focus, over my 15 years in hospitality, including 10 right down the street when I was an operations manager and a training manager with the Walt Disney World Resort. Is anyone here a current or former cast member? So some of you know how much we talk about guest feedback, how often we read the guest letters, including during cast member meetings, and how often that feedback from guests, while it might mention a restaurant they enjoyed or it might talk about their favorite ride, ultimately that feedback comes down to the experience they had with people, with the cast members who brought the magic to life. And at one point, that was me. And I don't know if anyone's noticed this yet, but that's me. So I put myself in my slides because I'm an egomaniac. But I'm actually piloting a raft to Tom Sawyer Island at this point in my life. And yes, the fanny pack is a decision. It's actually a life preserver, so it wasn't really a choice. I never fell in the river, just in case you were wondering. And while I was a great raft pilot, today I'm on the technology side of hospitality. And my team at Exonify, we build technology that enables over 4 million frontline workers around the world to do their best work, including with a variety of global hospitality brands, including Marriott, Jumeirah, the Dorchester Collection, Margaritaville, and of course, my friends at Eurest. So I'm excited to be joined by my friends who are going to share their perspective on how you can leverage technology to enable and empower your frontline teams across locations, across workplaces, and across brands. So Mike and Alison, if you want to start off our conversation by introducing yourselves, tell us a little bit about your roles and your organization.
Sure. So I actually run Exonify for Eurest, which is a division of Compass Group. So you might not have heard of Eurest. Compass Group is our parent company, but we're a food service management company, and we have about 20,000 team members across the U.S.
And my name is Mike Fiato. I'm the Senior Vice President of Guest Experience, so I get to work very closely with Alison. My team spends 50% of their time on the internal guests, so we create training, we do all of the onboarding, and then the other 50% of our time we spend with our clients and studying the guests that are in our spaces, providing those insights back to marketing and culinary so that they can take those insights and create programs to delight the folks that visit us.
So when it comes to enabling a frontline team, there are some fundamental gaps that a lot of organizations struggle with. I mean, the fact that frontline workers, most of them don't have a company email address, creates bigger headaches than you might often expect. So when it comes to getting people the right up-to-date information, reaching frontline team members with the right training, today a lot of organizations are still trying to cascade information through break room postings and conduct training that's in a classroom or maybe it's in a binder, and it's just not keeping pace with what organizations need. So I'm interested to get your perspective on how the trouble with reaching your frontline team with timely information and training, how is that impacting both your guest experience as well as your employee experience?
So I think the reality of it, and you probably all would agree, it's like two cups in a string. We tell the managers, we tell the DMs tell the managers, we hope the managers go out and tell the frontline associates. And the reality is, that's not going to impact your moments of truth in the way that you want them to happen. Somehow we knew we had to get directly to the front line, not necessarily skipping those other steps, but making sure that they're getting the information that they need to be effective at their jobs.
Absolutely, yeah. The majority of our team members do not have a company email address, and so it's completely dependent upon somebody telling them that information. And a lot of times it's not that they don't want to give that information to them, there's just no time. So they have to prioritize what it is that they're going to share, and some of that extra stuff just doesn't make its way down.
Has anyone here ever wished you didn't have a company email address? But when we talk about the fit of corporate technology and frontline work, I find stats say about 1% of corporate technology spend goes directly to support frontline workers, which I don't know how much that should be, but 1% feels dramatically low considering that frontline workers are 70 to 80% of the global workforce. And when when you think about the fact that corporate tools often fall flat on the front line because we just do our jobs differently than frontline employees do their jobs, it changes how you look at the role of technology and what makes technology fit within this space. So I'm curious, when you started to think about using technology to reach your teams, to better enable your teams, what was on your priority list in terms of what would make technology fit within your unique work environment, and how did that lead you down the path of working with someone like me?
Yeah, so I'll probably say a lot of things that people hate, but chatbots, I don't ever enjoy them. When my phone says good morning to me, it's fairly meaningless. So we wanted something that was high touch, and we wanted a person behind it. We didn't want an avatar behind it. So, we were looking for something that also would create two-way communication. And the beauty of our Exonify platform is, although we push out, and you'll see some numbers, lots of messaging, the amount that we get back and sharing of best practices and pictures and things of that sort is amazing. We have created, this technology has enabled us to create an engaged community, and at the front of that community, you need an actual person like Alison, who stays connected with the front line every day. She speaks in a way that they're interested. It's compelling information that they know will make them better. And I think that's the difference. All of the other things, and I'll say I'm already unpopular perhaps, but the other thing is a lot of times these things fall into an HR function. To me, this is an operational tool. This is a tool where operators talk to operators. And if you want to, whether it's a grill cook or somebody stocking the paper room, whatever it may be, if you want to create content that's compelling to them, it needs to be somebody that understands what they're doing every day, right? And can help communicate that to them. So Alison is masterful at doing that with our Exonify platform.
Really the communication between not just from top down, but like Mike said, back up to us. We're hearing a lot from them. We wanted that to be a keystone part of this platform, that it wasn't just us telling them what they had to do and giving them a task list, but we're hearing back what's working, what is challenging, and then they're able to share with one another too, which just, we never had that before, where they could communicate directly with other frontline team members across the country that they would otherwise have never met.
Now, when it comes to any type of technology, it's only as useful as the people who use it. So given frontline work is so kind of already task heavy, people have overflowing lists, it's hard to find labor hours for anything extra, and that includes doing more training or includes engaging with peers outside of your location. The question becomes, how do you get frontline workers to use this kind of technology when it comes to communication and training? And then how do you get people to keep coming back in a way that doesn't actually disrupt the day-to-day operation, so now you have management on you because, people are distracted, not doing what they're expected to do?
Right. We've incorporated our pre-service. There's something they're supposed to do every single day, so there's pre-service messaging. And so we're trying to incorporate many things that they're already supposed to be doing, so it's not a big disruptor. We have a lot of managers who say, well, when are they supposed to use this? During this time, everybody can get on it together. And then they also have that community within their team. And it keeps them coming back because there's a lot of gamification features within the platform, whether there are literal games, but they can earn points, they can really engage. So they're really competing against one another and themselves with the scoreboards and things that kind of keep pulling them back in and interested.
Yeah, I think when you're the executive sponsor of a new idea, probably the most important thing you can bring back to your CEO is a slide like this one. So when you look at the numbers of what's happening on this platform and what Alison's been able to create, it's voluntary. It's 100% voluntary, yet 7 out of 10 frontline associates are on it. We send out a communication at 10 o'clock every single day. Thousands of frontline associates read it in the first minute. You can see where we were. I think it's a 68% kind of engagement. We're at 89 today. So, we've created a community where they're really active. They feel like that they have a say. And, we're across 50 states, 20,000 associates. So this is a pretty disjointed group. Yet we have individuals that are interacting with, somebody in Tampa is interacting with somebody that's out in Salt Lake City, and they're sharing a best practice or something that they've done in the marketplace that can be used to, again, delight guests and clients. So it's a game changer.
And I think that's a good transition into the next piece of our conversation. How are you thinking about leveraging technology to empower the frontline team to deliver that elevated experience that maybe sometimes you don't even expect?
Yeah. Well, Alison, the slide's up. Why don't you tell them the water story, and then we'll go a little bit bigger.
Yeah, so we were trying to sell a lot of ambient water. It was a big push at the time, and so we said, show us your best water display. We put it out there. It was just kind of just a normal daily message that went out, and we gave them some tips, make sure that it's compelling and draws the guest's attention, but we didn't give them a whole lot of parameters. And so then Mike starts getting some phone calls from different managers in the business. What's going on? I came out from the office and there's water all over our salad bar. There's this big display, and they said that they learned about it on Exonify. What are you putting out there? Why are they doing this? And it was so neat to be able to see the front line taking action. They didn't have to wait for their management to tell them, hey, go and do this thing. They were actively able to engage with that and really own it for themselves.
Yeah, that's when we knew we got rid of the cup and the string, and we had something that was working, because, managers will call and they're saying, Mike, I don't know what's happening. But they would go out and then say, well, why are you doing this? And they would have all the answers. They say, well, people need to hydrate every single day. We're trying to help the guests. So all the stuff that we put in Exonify, our frontline team was repeating back to their managers. And, it's a very powerful tool. And another quick story, we just took over a bunch of airline clubs, 21 of them. And these were underperforming airline clubs. And so we took them over, and it was funny because the airline came to us and said, while you're transitioning the 20 clubs, can you replace everybody? It's 1,000 employees, and I don't know if, working in an airport is difficult. So we said, no, we probably can't, but we can transition the clubs, and then we'll work on the teams. So we went out and we were kind of scouting what the other company was doing prior to taking over, and they were really old school. So through the clubs, the employees were invisible. They stayed in the darkness. They came and cleaned up plates and cups, but they didn't really interact with anybody. So strategically, we got together and said, with the operational team, of course, and said, wouldn't it be cool if the day that we opened, they did the opposite? They just started talking to everybody, they're pouring water, doing all of these different things. So we took the Exonify app, we went through the learn function, which is a learning function, and we started to blast out micro-learnings. So saying how to interact with a guest. We even talked about the different guests that are in airline clubs. Business travelers on their computer probably don't want to talk to you, but a group of people with funny hats and cool shirts are probably going somewhere fun. You can go interact with them. If you see a couple comes in, looks like they got married, why don't we bring them out champagne as soon as they sit down and a lava cake? There are things that we can do that would really, really make a difference. And again, these are 20 clubs, 1,000 associates across the United States that all opened at once. So we did get out and train all of that live, but Exonify was our reach to start. So long story short, we get to the 60th day. On the 60th day, you get your club scores. And we're very excited to hear what our club scores are. The airline called us a little before the scores came out and said, listen, guys, we had a horrible month of flying. You're probably not going to get good scores. It's not your fault. Just be ready for what we think is going to come. Long story short, best scores they've had in 6 years. 3 of the clubs, best scores they've ever had. My favorite part, and I love to go, I don't know if you guys like surveys, I love surveys, and I love to go through the comments. So one of the top comments was, we love the new team. No new team. Same people, but given the purpose, which is a gift you can give your employees, is purpose, why you're there and what you're there to do. And then the moments of truth just actually happen. So, that was a really great example of this tool extending our reach and having an immediate impact on a bunch of new business for us.
And I love that story because it echoes the fact that people are capable, people are willing. They sometimes need the permission, or they sometimes just need some additional information, and they can take that experience to the next place. Because when we do research with frontline workers time and time again, one of the biggest motivators that makes frontline employees feel like they had a good day at work is that they helped a customer solve a problem.
For sure. I think, JD, sometimes, and listen, we've all been in these conversations, guys, where things aren't going right, and leadership gets in a room, and we somehow come to the conclusion that we've got the wrong people. maybe we should look at ourselves. Maybe we haven't created the right environment. Maybe we haven't told them what we want them to do. Maybe we haven't shown them the way to do it. I think my experience has been, and maybe I'm jaded, most frontline associates want to do the right thing. They want to be good at their job. But you got to give them the tools and the expertise to do so.
And the why behind why you want them to do it.
Yeah, and again, that's why Alison's on the team, because she does a great job. I may say something, but she's the one that has to put it into words to the front line as to why we want them to do it, because it's not a how and can. People know what you do. They even know how to do it, right? They don't know why they're doing it. And I think that piece and that empathy piece is huge, especially in hospitality.
And I think another piece to connect to that is, going back to my time at Disney, we could talk all day about how much money people spend on a vacation. That motivates a certain group of people, but not a broad base of people who are here to do a job for a certain reason. You change that piece of your communication out for a story about how the experience of being with us impacts people in their lives, suddenly the motivation starts to shift and the WIFM starts to shift. And I think around that idea of storytelling, I think there's so many techniques and tactics we apply to the guest experience that we can borrow and apply into our employee experience. And one of those is around the idea of personalizing the experience, making sure we reach people with what they need when they need it. So how are you thinking about personalizing and the importance of personalizing employee experiences, just like you might for the guest experience?
We always try to think back to, we want to make a big company feel small. So we don't want them to feel like they work for a company with 20,000 people. We want them to feel like it's very personable. And part of the algorithm within Exonify really does that. It personalizes the learning and the questions that they're getting. If they're excelling in one area, it's not going to keep giving those questions to them in that training. It's going to move on to the next thing because they've mastered it. And I think that that's really neat, that it's not just a one-size-fits-all approach. It's really specific to how confident you're feeling and in that material, and when you're ready to move on, then the system will move on, and you'll get some new information.
Yes, if you want to feel insignificant ever, just walk into a room with a bunch of hourly associates or managers with Alison. It's as if I don't exist. She's a rock star, because they all know her, and they think they're talking to her through this platform, and that's why I'm so people show us avatars and show us this and show us that, and I'm like, no, there's a person behind this, and you're going to actually meet her and see her at some point. And I think that's, we've had one person drive this technology the entire time we've had it, and I think that's what's kept us in the right place.
I played a similar role. I used to work in contact centers as well. And I was the voice behind a lot of the training and communication across multiple contact center locations. But people never met me because I was hiding in an office somewhere in Orlando. And one day I went to the headquarters, which is in Fort Lauderdale, and I was in an elevator with other people and just talking to somebody. And people just started turning and looking at me because they heard the voice. And then they had opinions. That's a different conversation. So kind of taking us down the path of, we've talked about putting technology in place so you can reach people, making sure that we're focusing content and the story to a place that's motivating people to elevate the experience. There's also a part of frontline work which is just about constant change, right? New policy, new process, new product, new promotion. So how are you leveraging technology in this type of an experience to help people just keep up with the pace of the business?
You're the expert. I have a bunch I'd say, but you know the answer.
I think just making sure that, going back to that why, they understand what the change is, and that way they're not caught off guard by it, and they know what to expect. I'm not sure.
Well, but I think the other part of it is you balance. So if the messaging that you push out every single day is do this, do that, don't do this, please do that, here's safety, they're going to shut you off eventually. They're going to stop interacting with the tool because the tool's not doing anything for them. She does a masterful job at balancing off all of the corporate communications that we need to send, because like all of you, there's a bunch of them, but the content that is designed specifically for the field. and for them to do. And then, of course, we have a holding spot for all of these documents. So if they need to go back, because we do have all managers on the program as well, if they need to go back and take a look at one of those documents, it's stored in a place that's easy for them to find.
Mm-hmm. They can reference those things when it works for them, not necessarily when it works for us. We have a really cool chart that's going to show some of that as well. But I think that's what's so key, is meeting them where they are and delivering that when they need it.
I think that comment around filtering is critical, because if you take us back to the beginning of the story, and if we're living in a world where we don't have technology that fits how Frontline works, and we have just email flying at property managers and line of business managers from all of these different stakeholders, now it's up to 1,000 or tens of thousands of different people to filter that information themselves based on their property and figuring out, okay, what am I actually going to communicate? But when you put these types of reliable, repetitive channels in place, and people have an experience they understand they can rely on, that filtering is almost being taken care of for them. And like you said, you can provide different types of information in different ways, because as a learning and development professional, every stakeholder comes to me and says, we need training on. And my response usually, at least in the back of my head, is, no, we don't. But I don't necessarily have an alternative to offer to them. But if I have a communication channel, if I have an online community, if I have a knowledge repository, and I have the ability to deliver more structured activity when it's the right thing to do, I have options now to fit what I'm trying to do into the world of the people who don't have a lot of extra time for what I'm trying to ask of them today.
Well, and here's another thing, JD, that I think it's how you send the information out. I know that a lot of safety memos are riveting, but I have a hard time reading through them. But if the safety guy comes on and does a video on his smartphone and I load it on the technology and I send it to everybody, I'm probably more apt to watch it. So the different ways that you filter the information to the front line and to your guests, I think, is an important part. And for us, we treat the front line, they're our guests, we work for them. So trying to figure out the best way to get information that they need without sending them a memo and just saying, read this.
It's amazing how many CEOs of large brands that I work with where they're just enamored by the idea that if I want to shoot a video in my office today and send it out to my entire workforce, I can do that, and I don't have to ask anybody.
Right.
I don't have to go to the corporate comms team. I don't have to figure out what the intranet is doing. I can just talk to my people, which I think, especially pre-pandemic, a lot of people didn't understand what that gap existed between the corporate team and the frontline team. And now I see more and more organizations trying to close that gap in the right way.
I mean, we even used it for training. We did a chai thing where we had a master barista make some chai thing. We have a lot of coffee shops through our thing. And it got like hundreds of thousands, all these views. And it just surprised me. We've put voluntary training on the platform just to see if people would take it. And people take it. And they want to improve themselves and get better. And again, that's where all your top flight performers are. They're all in one place for you to access them if you want to.
If anyone would like to tell me to tell the story of the guy who got his frontline team's attention by eating dog food in his videos, you can talk to me after the session. It's a really good story. But anyway, so we're almost through a conversation about technology, and we haven't talked about artificial intelligence yet. So in a world of technology where we're talking more and more about AI, we're talking agents, we're talking automation, of course, these tools are going to change how we do our jobs. They're going to change how everybody does their jobs. But my question for you is, how are you in a digitally enabled workplace making sure that the person stays at the center of the conversation as we shift the tools that are helping them do their jobs?
Yeah, it goes back to remembering who your audience is. Like in our business, the majority of our people, even our managers, they have very, very little office time, so we can't give them 10-minute videos to watch. We can't, put a lot of stuff on them that they need to sit down and do and spend a lot of hours at the computer. They just don't have that time. So being really intentional about knowing who is receiving it and maybe adjusting some of that messaging and utilizing those AI tools to tap into that of like which groups need to see this different information.
And if I think you saw the chart behind Alison, we asked Exonify, when are people on the app? Just so that we could see. And what we saw is they're on the app 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. So some grill cook at 3 in the morning is on Exonify looking at pictures and seeing what people are doing across the country. I don't know that you can buy that. That's pretty impressive for an hourly associate to take that upon themselves and do that. And I think the other thing, and we laughed. But anytime we put digital and hospitality together, I always think of like jumbo shrimp. Like, okay, I get it, but the technology has to work. It's people that are going to make you feel a certain way. And I think with Axonify, you have the ability to put out messaging in such a way that it's a person telling you, not a robot or a chat bot, but actually that actual person films himself, puts him on the app, and talks to you. And then again, you make this giant company feel tiny, right? And that was really the goal at the start of this, was how do we make it feel small? How do we make it feel personal? How do we make you feel like you have a voice with us?
You know, you remember this morning, Jim from Six Flags told that story about the Marriott executive who was visiting the property, and then he walked in and he was talking to the bell person, and then the front desk person comes up and says, great to see you again. And he's wondering, well, how do you know that I was here before? And they had secret signals that they basically use between one another to deliver that kind of exceptional experience. And after Jim told that story, he had a slide, and it said, it's not always about technology, but it's always about the guest. And I hope Jim doesn't mind. I'd like to slightly amend that slide, because I would say it's not always about technology, but it's always about people. And that those people include both the guests who are experiencing your hospitality brand every day, as well as the people who are bringing that experience to life. And because I worked for Disney for 10 years, I feel compelled to end every session with a Walt Disney quote. So as Walt Disney once said, you know, you can dream, design, create, and build the most wonderful place in the world, but it takes people to make the dream a reality. So my hope is in our conversation today, you've taken away some ideas and some insights and some tactics that you can apply to help your frontline teams bring your brand experience and bring that dream to life within your organizations every day. So first, I'd like to thank Mike and Alison for sharing their insights with us today. I'd like to thank everyone for hanging out with us and all of the work that you do to enable your frontline teams. So that said, thank you again so much for your time.
Guys.
Thank you.